It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. Gavin Newsom has had a very busy day. He did a sit-down interview at a Los Angeles Economic Forum, he had a press conference, and he announced a brand new podcast. Let's start with the Economic Forum interview, because Gavin Newsom did something that he does a lot. Gavin Newsom, when he likes to talk and wax poetically, loves to refer to his favorite African proverb, although he's not even calling it an African proverb anymore. He's co-opting it for himself.
There's always a temptation. You want to go fast, you can go alone in the spirit, even of all the partners that you've assembled here. And we could have put out a plan and you would have just rolled your eyes. Or we can go far by going together.
I feel like I've heard that somewhere before. Let's go to 4 months ago.
All of our partners, it is an extraordinary thing. There's an old African proverb, some of you heard me say, says if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together.
And let's go to 3 months before that.
We're all, as I said, better off, and we're all better off. You want to go fast, you can go alone, but if you want to go far, we need to go together.
And 2 months before that.
But one of the things that fills me with gratitude is this remarkable coalition. You know, there's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
When you cover Gavin Newsom as much as I have in the last 5 years, you realize he says the same things over and over and over and over again. He even makes fun of the fact that places like Politico have a bingo card for some of the cliches that he throws out constantly. But, of course, the African proverb isn't what made the news today. It's the fact that Governor Gavin Newsom, who has a full-time job as governor of the state of California, and also, I was under the impression, still a part-time job being the co-host of a podcast, Politicking with Gavin, his agent buddy, and Marshawn Lynch.
Hey, you stay your ass off of Hagenberger.
Turns out that Gavin Newsom is now going to be hosting yet another podcast. Gavin announced the premiere coming soon of This is Gavin Newsom.
We need to change the conversation. And that's why I'm launching a new podcast.
Oh, this has got that badass music that he means business.
We need to change the conversation. And that's why I'm launching a new podcast. And this is going to be anything but the ordinary politician podcast. I'm going to be talking.
There's way too many of those at this point, especially for elected officials that are supposed to be working their asses off at the job they already have.
I'm going to be talking to people directly that I disagree with, as well as people I look up to. But more important than anything else,
he has gotten extra gravelly lately. I don't know if he wants to start taxing his voice more by doing an hour of podcasting a week.
But more important than anything else, I'll be talking directly with you, the listener. You
going to take live phone calls? Oh, the screener for that would be really overworked.
Real conversations. What's going on with the cost of eggs? What are the impacts, real impacts to you around tariffs?
Wow, some real local issues that the governor of California would love to talk about. Oh, wait, these are all national issues that he can pontificate about without having to answer to any of his actual responsibilities.
What power does an executive order really have?
Actually, that'll be a fun one, because Gavin signs executive orders all the time that mean nothing except to get him a headline in the press. Like, what was it? 4 months ago, when people are starting to get real irritated up in Northern California with PG&E getting approvals for 6 rate hikes in 1 year. PG&E bills across Northern California are 50% higher than they were a few years ago. And Gavin Newsom knows and feels the heat, so he puts out an executive order that he's going to order his agencies to find ways to save money. And then they never came out with a report until Ashley Zavala begged them to, and the report said pretty much nothing. Gavin is all about the flash and not a whole lot about the follow-through, as evidenced by all the headlines he got from his first podcast with Marshawn Lynch that I guess he's bored with now because nobody's writing about it.
Hey, you stay your ass off of Hagenberger.
And by the way, he stopped doing that podcast. He stopped at the beginning of the year to focus on the fires, which is understandable. They haven't even posted a new episode, except stuff they taped before the fires with the disclaimer, hey, Gavin's all being funny here. Well, trying to be funny here, because this happened before all the tragedies in Los Angeles. But did he abandon Marshawn and his buddy Doug? What happened?
Hagenberger.
Maybe he realized that was not the best approach. That podcast was not doing him any favors, and it was only getting him into trouble.
What's really going on?
And the only people listening to it were myself, Ashley Zavala at KCRA, and probably Alex Michelson, and other political reporters, Eton Wallace. All the California reporters were listening to it, but nobody was actually enjoying themselves listening to politicking.
And what's really going on inside of Doge? Look, there's an onslaught of information that we...
They going to get Elon for that one? You know, they used to be close.
Look, there's an onslaught of information that we take in. So let's take it to the sources without the typical political mumbo jumbo. In the first few weeks, we're going to be sitting down with some of the biggest leaders and architects in the MAGA movement. This is Gavin Newsom.
Okay, that's pretty narcissistic. It's not the Gavin Newsom show, not the Gavin Newsom podcast. It's called...
This is Gavin Newsom.
This is Gavin Newsom, where Gavin Newsom talks to people that disagree with him. And while I am totally for measured political discourse where people can have disagreements without screaming at each other, and I think that's a very important thing, I don't understand why that has to be done by the sitting governor of the largest state in the union, who I would believe has a very important job. And even if that job doesn't take up his entire day, his entire life, he's got 4 school-age children. Don't you want to spend any time with them? I mean, we know he doesn't because he spends most of his nights watching Fox News and drinking wine, as he has admitted to over and over and over again.
Clean and sober is one of the biggest damn mistakes this country's ever made. I know it's a hold your hand idealistic point of view that somehow magically, I mean, God bless some of you. If you're like me, I've been known to have a glass of wine at night watching some of the nightly news. We all need to self-medicate periodically.
Maybe more than a glass. But hey, let's take him at his word. He wants to get people in the MAGA movement, in the national politics space, maybe people who are on other podcasts, other commentators, to go on with him and debate the issues civilly. I got 2 questions for you at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Number 1, will you be subscribing to Gavin Newsom's podcast? Will you be giving him a click? Will you be giving him a follow? Will you be giving him a listen? Will you be subscribing to...
This is Gavin Newsom.
800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Would you like to be a follower of the...
This is Gavin Newsom
podcast? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. And here's a little fun one, because Gavin wants to interview people that disagree with him and disagree with him vehemently. Do you have any suggestions of who Gavin should try to book on the show? 800-222-KABC.
This is Gavin Newsom.
800-222-5222. Now, Gavin Newsom at his press conference this afternoon was asked over and over again about Karen Bass's mishandling of the fires. He wouldn't answer those questions. We'll get to some of that sound later. But he was also asked by Fox 11's Alex Michelson about the podcast. And this is exactly what Gavin wanted. Everyone talking about the podcast and not any of the other issues facing the state. Gavin does know how to get a headline. He just doesn't know how to follow through with it.
There's a lot of numbers and a lot of stuff being talked about in terms of, but real concisely, can you explain what exactly this blueprint is doing for the average person in terms of tangible results?
Yeah, Gavin was doing one of these economic press conferences where he starts talking about a plan that doesn't really mean anything to anybody and doesn't have any details. But then Alex steps on his own question and asks...
And then the off-topic question. We hear you have a new podcast coming. Can you tell us about that?
This is the first time I've supported your off-topic inquiry.
Yes, you have.
This is why Gavin Newsom likes having a podcast, because the press conferences end up being everyone asking him about his podcast.
Yes, you haven't. And for people that might say that's.
And remember, I'm talking about this as a man with experience. Not only have I been in broadcast radio for, what am I at? This will be my 19th year. That's right. I started in radio in September 2006. So my 20 year will be September 2026. It is 2025. So I'm in my 19th year of working in radio. But I also have a lot of experience hosting podcasts. I did 1,100 episodes of a podcast back when podcasting was cool in 2009, before everybody had one. And I have co-hosted on podcasts. I have put together and produced podcasts, way too many to count. So I know what I'm talking about here. I'm an expert in this field.
Yes, you haven't. And for people that might say that's a bit of a distraction from your day job.
So great question from Alex. What do you say to people that say you hosting a podcast about national politics is a distraction from your day job, which is supposed to be very demanding?
No, it's essential for my day job. It's an opportunity to communicate people, respecting all of you directly. The world's changed. We need to change with it in terms of how we communicate and continue additional touch points, have two-way conversations, which are part of that podcast as well, in terms of having people.
Gavin's going to bring the whole country together. Are you ready to kumbaya, everybody?
In terms of having people be able to gauge me directly.
Will he be talking about any issues that he's directly responsible for? Like, I don't know, the homelessness crisis? Because that would be a fun debate. I would love for somebody to go on Gavin's podcast and ask him, where'd that $25 billion go exactly?
And I want to engage people that often I engage with in private and make public those conversations. And I think that's what inspired this. I had some interesting conversations with people I deeply disagree with. And
he's talking about his father-in-law.
And we found a lot of common ground. And I just thought, I said to someone, one of those conversations, I said, wish this was been recorded, because I think it would distill a sense of well-being people.
Gavin's one of these guys, oh man, we should have got this on the air. Should have got this recorded. Could have put it out there. Could have got some clicks. I don't want to have authentic conversations unless the microphone is on. Gavin, I've been there. Try to be an authentic person and try not to put everything out there on the air. It'll bite you in the ass.
Because I think it would distill a sense of well-being people, that, we don't hate each other. While we have different points of view, you actually expressed some interesting insight, I said, that I didn't fully appreciate, and I hope I offered the same. And so that was the idea.
This is what Gavin was pitching when he went on his debate with Sean Hannity and Ron DeSantis a couple years ago, when he again wanted to get on the national stage. And that wasn't we're going to have a spirited debate, but we're going to talk about the issues. No, it was a scream fest back and forth with accusations, and nobody learned anything. And even though I wanted to listen to it because I need to for my job, I had to turn it off because it gave me a headache.
For the website, well, one of them will be on shortly, and there'll be a reason for the guests that will be on, because it sort of reflects some of those conversations. And so I just think that's important. And I think that was reflected in the election as well. Everything's changed. Your business is changing radically and generationally. I mean, it's just fun. Everything has changed. So it would be as dumb as we want to be if we continue down the old status quo.
Well, of course, we need to all start hosting our own podcast. That's the only way to move forward in the future. What?
So it would be as dumb as we want to be if we continue down the old status quo.
And you could, do interviews with local journalists that have some issues that they'd like to talk about with you. He will grant an interview every now and then to Alex, but when's the last time you sat down with Ashley Zavala of KCRA 3?
So it would be as dumb as we want to be if we continue down the old status quo and try to pave over the old cow path. We've got to do things differently and keep iterating, and I'll just end on that.
He loves to say iterate. That is one of his favorite words.
I'll just end on that and get to your first point, your first question.
He doesn't remember what the first question is.
I've been doing this type of thing for years and years. I did a show with Al Gore where Elon Musk and I were driving in to the studio together in this thing called a Model S. I think it was one of the first times it was ever exposed on a TV show.
You can actually see that show on YouTube. When Gavin was lieutenant governor, and again, it shows that being lieutenant governor isn't really a job, he was hosting his own weekend show on Current TV, which was an Al Gore-owned cable network. And Gavin Newsom's favorite guest on that show was then Elon Musk. They were talking about 2010, 2011, and they talked about, oh, Gavin loved being a TV host. I think Gavin wants to do this partially because he's jealous of the broadcasting industry, and I totally understand that. I'm a broadcaster. I love this job. I can't think of a better job for me. But I, as a broadcaster, should not be actually in charge of the levers of government. Gavin Newsom is in charge of the levers of government.
His new Tesla. With Elon trying to figure out how to use,
Will Elon do Gavin Newsom's podcast? I'd love to know.
The controls.
Apparently, Elon's going to go on the Daily Show. That should be fun.
The controls. Did the same thing with Sergey Brin, and he had those Google glasses, which became sort of the origin story for a lot of the change you're seeing.
So wait, this is going to be a tech show? Gavin on Tech? We're going to look at gadgets and talk about AI.
Oculus and others. Marissa Mayer before she went to Yahoo. So I've been sort of in that space of trying to be a little iterative. It's what Engaged California is all about, a different platform. And wrote a book years ago, Citizenville, around platform thinking, how to make the town square digital. This is a manifestation of that. And so I think it's consistent with all that. That said, you asked the first question. Now I've forgotten it.
Of course. The question about why he was actually at the presser, he has no idea about. But I will talk forever and ever and ever again about his podcast. Please subscribe. Will you be subscribing to Gavin Newsom's podcast? Who do you think should be a guest on Gavin Newsom's podcast? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Bill in Irvine. Bill, hello.
Hey, Randy. Here's the deal. So now that Dan Bongino is giving up his show, there's a slot for Gavin Newsom. I think the podcast should be called The Lame Duck Show with Gavin Newsom, because in November of next year, he'll have nothing going for himself. He'll have no relevance. He'll have no job. He'll be out of work. And he should just preempt it and just say Lame Duck Show with Gavin Newsom. He's not relevant. He's not authentic. He says all these words. When you listen to him, after about 3 minutes, he puts you to sleep. He just has a lot of words. He has nothing intelligent to say. Anyone that goes on his show that has a difference of opinion, he just talks over them. With me, he has no. If he were to change his ideology and become a conservative, then people might listen to him. But the same old Gavin Newsom, he's not authentic. He's fake. He's like a plastic credit card with no credit limit. He's just nothing. He has no credibility. And the worst thing of all is that anyone that listens to a podcast wants real, authentic information. And this guy just spouts a bunch of words that mean nothing. And by the way, he believes in the opposite of what he says. There's no way he can truly believe in his liberal left agenda, because it's total nonsense. He himself does not even believe his word salad of just highfalutin speak. He doesn't even, you can tell when he speaks, he's just spouting off words. He's locked into a liberal ideology that he cannot escape. He's in his own prison, and nobody's interested. Nobody's going to listen, and he's a lame duck. And there's no way he'll even be the nominee on the Democratic side. He's done. He's finished. He's just going to float off, and he should just open up a restaurant and be done with his career, because he's done. He's finished. Nobody's interested in Gavin Newsom for anything.
I think you make some really strong points, Bill, especially about the fact that Gavin does not sound like an authentic person. I've heard Gavin in every single venue possible because I have to listen to all of this stuff for my work. I've even listened to all his podcasts with Marshawn. The man never sounds authentic. So how are you going to have an authentic, prescriptive conversation with somebody that disagrees with you when you're not authentic to begin with? That's a great point, Bill. Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. 1-800 800-222-5222. Gavin Newsom's coming out with a new podcast.
This is Gavin Newsom.
Will you be subscribing? Who do you think should be on Gavin Newsom's new podcast? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com. And the easiest way ever to get the podcast of this show is go to kabc.com/newsblitz. Speaking of podcasts, Gavin Newsom, the famed host of Politicking with Marshawn Lynch,
Hey, you stay your ass off of Hagenberger.
has apparently abandoned that show to launch a new podcast.
This is Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom wants to talk to people that disagree with him, politicians, commentators, what have you, about the real issues. Well, national issues. He doesn't want to talk about California issues as far as I know.
This is Gavin Newsom.
Because it would be great for him to talk to a Californian, whether it's a politician like Tom McClintock or Kevin Kiley, or it is somebody who lives in California that's very up on the issues like Adam Carolla. But I think he wants to talk national stuff because then he doesn't have to answer for his day job because he's not just a podcaster. He's the governor of the state.
Because it's true.
800-222-KABC is the phone number, 1-800-222-5222. Will you be subscribing to Gavin's new podcast?
This is Gavin Newsom.
Who do you think should be a guest on Gavin's podcast? 800-222-KABC. Let's go to Morris in Hollywood. Morris, hello.
Yeah, it'd be a good idea to interview Ric Flair, maybe throw him in the wrestling ring with Newsom and thump him around a little bit, put some common sense into his head. So, or even have his daughter Charlotte Flair throw her in the ring with him, and put some sense into his head. Yeah, because he's not thinking he's not using no common sense. I mean, it's what comes out of his mouth is garbage, and the end result, the state of California is suffering from all this crap. So that wouldn't be a bad idea. Throw him in a wrestling ring, wake him up a little bit there.
I think we should get that styling, profiling, nature boy himself into the ring with Gavin Newsom on his podcast. Hey, Ric Flair could promote his energy drink. Ric Flair had a birthday this week. Happy birthday, Ric Flair.
It's Wednesday.
It is. That is what we call a benchmark in the business, where you do something every week, but it's the best benchmark in the world because it lasts 5 seconds. It's not what you watch in Wednesday. Let's go to Frank in Orange County. Frank, hello.
Hey, Randy. I think we're going the wrong direction. I think Gavin Newsom should have enter into psychoanalysis and have it live on his podcast. And I think we should take him through all the steps of psychoanalysis, maybe rehab, maybe what he needs to be medicated with, like get really deep and really personal. His relationship with Nancy Pelosi and all the power structure, and maybe he's a pyromaniac. I don't know. Maybe he enjoyed the fires in L.A. I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, he's a sick and twisted individual. We would learn a lot, and we could probably avoid re-electing someone like Gavin Newsom if we could have podcasts like that.
Psychoanalyzing Gavin Newsom. I love the idea. Let's make it raw, real, and unedited. Let's start off with the question, Governor, how much do you drink each night as you watch Fox News?
Thank you, Randy. You're the best. Woo!
Thanks so much for the call, Frank. Appreciate it. Oh, boy. Woo! 800-222-KABC is the phone number, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Lawrence in Cerritos. Lawrence, hello.
Hello, guys, and thanks again for taking my call. Newsom with the podcast, that's about as original as his hairstyle, if I might pipe in on that. So this is our esteemed governor using our tax money in a very, very intelligent manner. I don't think he knows what decade it is. I don't think he's going to be successful at that. I think he's just trying to garner some kind of brand to further his step towards a presidential run in probably 28. And it's going to fail just the same way he's failing our state. I think you should call his podcast Bloviating Roadkill. That might be a good one. But
That's
thanks
pretty
for
great.
you guys, and thanks for taking my call. Cheers.
Thanks so much for the call, Lawrence. Appreciate it. Bloviating Roadkill. I'd subscribe to that. You know, Lawrence makes a really good point. Gavin Newsom is definitely doing this to keep a national profile, to stay on the national scene after he is termed out as governor. And maybe he wants to run for president. Maybe he thinks he has a path there. But what's so funny to me is for Gavin Newsom and all the other aspirationals that are going to be running for president in 2028. Gavin's been the governor of this state for 8 years. Wouldn't it be, I don't know, an easy way to run successfully for president if in those 8 years you fixed all the problems in the state of California? Because I can't think of one thing that is better in 2025 than when Gavin Newsom got into office in 2018. Can you? 800-222-KABC is the phone number. 1-800-222-5222. Will you be subscribing to Gavin Newsom's newest podcast venture?
This is Gavin Newsom.
800-222-KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Will you be subscribing to Gavin Newsom's latest podcast?
This is Gavin Newsom.
He wants to interview people who disagree with him politically. Are you tuning in? Let's go to Stuart in Seal Beach. Stuart, hello.
Thank you, Randy, for taking my call. I think the first guest should be his ex-wife, Kimberly Guilfoyle, who is a strong Republican. I think number two would be the campaign manager who was his best friend that I understand he cheated with the wife of that best friend. And third would be Shangy. I would like to see who would be more intelligent, Gavin or Shangy. And then even fourth, I would throw in a border collie. I understand there's a border collie that has a vocabulary of 500 words. I'd like to see who is smarter, Gavin or that border collie.
Those are some great suggestions, especially Shangy.
Absolutely.
But you know what's funny, Stuart? I wouldn't be surprised if one of the initial guests on his show isn't Kimberly Guilfoyle. He is very friendly with his ex-wife, and that used to be his direct way into talk to Trump was because she was with Trump Jr. at the time. I think it's very possible that she could be a guest on the show. At least she's got some free time before she goes through confirmation to be ambassador to Greece. That would be fairly interesting because that couple was wild, apparently.
Yeah, I'd subscribe just for that one, but I would want to bring in the campaign manager and the woman that he cheated with of his best friend. That, to me, would be scintillating radio.
I'd love to hear that, and I'd love to hear why he went to rehab for all that and why he actually didn't stop drinking. Thanks so much for the call, Stuart. Appreciate it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. I guarantee that's a possibility. They're very friendly. 800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. If you'd like to email us, you can do so at randykabc@gmail.com. AJ writes in and says, how many fires have there been on Gavin Newsom's watch as governor? AJ, too many to count, and some of the most devastating in the state's history. 790 KABC welcomes Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Evening to the Greek Theater on May 31st. Tickets are on sale Friday at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-2222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Nederlander Concerts. Good luck dialing. Let's go back to the phones and go to Ermias in Sherman Oaks. Ermias, hello.
Hey, Randy. Great show as always. The only reason Gavin Newsom started a podcast, in my opinion, is to avoid talking to the media. He's getting bad press over the fires, and he wants to avoid the media and just put out content and send that out instead of talking to the media. Also, if the show is being monetized and we're paying for it, are we going to get that money back?
That's a really, really good point. I don't think that any tax dollars are going to this. I know he's partnering with iHeart on this thing, and I don't think he spent any taxpayer money on any of the stuff that he did when he did the podcast with Marshawn Lynch, but he is doing it while he's working as governor, which is kind of strange and kind of a little conflict. But hey, this is what Gavin Newsom's dream is, to be a podcaster. Gavin Newsom at his press conference was also asked if this podcast will really change political discourse or just add fuel to the existing fire.
Governor Newsom, on the new podcast, not about why you're doing the podcast.
See, well,
you've been a huge critic of
what have I been critical about? Oh, have I?
The back and forth on X, the nastiness of the times in which we live. How can your new podcast not be more of that?
Well, it might be.
Oh, it might be more of the same crap that we see on cable news.
Well, it might be. I don't want it to be. My intention is the opposite, and that's how it was promoted. At least that's what I said. I didn't read how it was promoted, but I should because he
has no idea what's in the press release.
Because my intent was to communicate a totally different paradigm, and that is to find common ground and to also try to mine other people's points of view.
How about you have some of those conversations with people that have different points of view in your own legislature, in your own government? 40% of the state. That would be helpful. How about working on fixing this state?
Without assigning any, I don't know. We all want to be, I've said this a million times, we all want to be loved. We all need to love. We all want to be protected, connected, and respected.
I knew he was going to say that. This guy is in my head.
Part of something bigger than ourselves. And so people have different points of view about how to achieve all that. And so I'd love to learn more about what's the motivation. Why is the issue of, fill in the blank, fill in a controversial issue. Why is that so important to you? More important than the 6 or 7 things that you don't seem to talk about as much, and vice versa. It's a chance to dialogue.
Well, why is, let's say, he said one of the topics, tariffs, so important to you, Gavin, instead of talking about some of the issues that are literally burning down the state, like the fires that are burning down the state, or homelessness that is burning down the state,
and vice versa,
or the crooked utilities that are burning down the state,
and vice versa. It's a chance to dialogue with me, perhaps why we have different points of view in that respect. So that's the approach. So it's intended to do the exact opposite, but I can't promise that.
And they didn't want to answer any more questions after that. Now, earlier on Johnny's show, somebody emailed that they would love to see the first person be a guest on Gavin's show be Adam Carolla, who was a longtime radio host in Southern California, Loveline, did the Adam Carolla Show, a show I worked on as the censor, the dump guy. And I think that's a great idea. Adam Carolla, of course, still has a very successful podcast. My old co-host of the Pretty Good Podcast was his news girl for many years, Gina Grad. And if you want a sample of what that would sound like, listen to when Gavin Newsom was doing the spin interviews after the Biden debate last June, and he called into News Nation, and on the panel at News Nation was, and this is with the Cuomo Show, Adam Carolla.
Adam Carolla here. Governor, why did you shut the beaches in California during COVID?
Yeah, I think we all were working on information at the time. We had no basis of deeply understanding the virus. I think they did the same thing.
So you didn't know anything, so why'd you shut the beaches?
States like Florida.
If you didn't know anything, why'd you shut the beaches?
Well, we didn't know. Yeah, because people were concerned early in the pandemic. Information was coming out as it relates to how it was transferred.
Okay, I'm subscribing if we get to see that. I would love to see that. There you go. We'll keep tabs on Gavin Newsom when he releases his first episode. Have a wonderful evening. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.